Hello, it's Mr. Turek, and I'm going to show you how to use Lightroom. I'm just going to go over the basics of Lightroom, none of the really advanced features. Make sure you know where your photos that you're going to import into Lightroom are. I'm actually going to use a folder of photos of flowers, and I know where this folder is located on my computer. If you're importing files from a flash drive or your camera card, make sure you know where to locate those photos and explore, and then open up Lightroom. To open up Lightroom, go down to the Start menu and click on Adobe Lightroom Classic, or click on Lightroom in your taskbar. When Lightroom opens up, you're going to go to File, Import Photos and Video. When this folder opens up, you're going to go to the folder where you're going to import your photos from. I know where that folder is, and it's kind of already open for me right here. I'm going to click on that folder, and by default, all of the photos will be checkmarked. You can uncheck photos you don't want imported, like let's say I don't want that one, I don't have to import it. And once you have all your photos picked, you're going to go down to Import, and you're going to click Import. Depending on how many files you import, it might take a while to import all your photos into Lightroom. Once your photos are in Lightroom, you're going to go to Develop. And under Develop is where you're going to do most of your adjustments. In this preview window, you can see the photo itself. And down in the film strip, you can see all the photos that you imported. To work on a single photo, you can click on it. I'm going to work on editing this photo right here. A couple of basic things. If you want to zoom in on your photo, you're going to hit Control plus. If you want to zoom out, you're going to hit Control minus. Control minus, Control plus. That's going to allow you to zoom in and out on your photo. You can also use your scroll wheel on your mouse if you hold down Control. And then your hand tool is going to allow you to click and drag to move around your image so that you can see up close and make adjustments. Alright, so in the Develop tab, the first couple adjustments you're going to do are at the very top. And you're basically going to work your way down through all of these different adjustments. You don't necessarily have to do all of them, but you're going to do most of them for each photo. And this is a way to quickly adjust the basic outline of all of the light information in your photo. So the first option is to adjust white balance. To adjust white balance, you're going to click on this little eyedropper tool. You're going to go into your photo and you're going to try to find pure white. This photo really doesn't have it. So if you don't find pure white, you're going to look for pure gray. Okay. And pure gray, like a neutral 50-50 gray, is going to give your camera and the file a sense of what white is. And you'll notice the overall color temperature of my flower just changed. And that's because I sampled that kind of warmish gray down here. Normally you want to adjust white balance if you feel like the lighting conditions were a bit off and you didn't get a really good sense of what the white was. If I click on my rose here, didn't work. Need a darker neutral area. Let's try down here. That's a little bit better. Okay. That adjusted my white balance for the overall image. Okay. If you don't think you need to adjust your white balance, that's fine. You can adjust your basic tone through going through each of these sliders and sort of messing around to see what makes it look a little bit better. Let's say it's a bit overexposed. You can turn down the exposure and make it darker, or you can turn it up if it's underexposed. You can increase the contrast a little bit. Under highlights, shadows, whites, and blacks, that adjusts the individual output of each of those colors and their ranges. So highlights would be your lightest colors. So if I want the whites in this image to turn down just a little bit, I could turn down my exposure, which turns down everything, or I could just turn down my highlights. Now it's going to make the lighter colors a lot darker. Okay, you can also see my histogram adjusting. So highlights would be the upper range of the histogram. You can see that they're moving down when I adjust my highlights. Same goes for my shadows. I can make my shadows lighter or darker. For whites, I could adjust lighter or darker. And for blacks, lighter or darker. It's pretty straightforward. Under presence, you're going to have clarity, vibrance, and saturation. Clarity just is another contrast slider of sorts. It's going to separate the blending of the colors and make them more pronounced. So notice if I turn down clarity, everything gets real blurry and smudged together. If I turn up clarity, all of the different color tones are going to separate. That's up to you whether you like that or not. Vibrance is going to turn up the basic color intensity, and saturation is going to turn up the saturation. So any gray colors are going to get oversaturated and more pure if you turn up the saturation. If you scroll down, you're going to notice that there are options like the tone curve. That's another global adjustment that you can mess with. You can mess with your basic color outputs and completely change how colors are perceived. You can do split toning, all sorts of fancy stuff with the amount of detail and sharpening. Again, these are all optional, but just play around with the sliders and you're going to have a really good sense of what each of these sections do. Lens correction is a really common one. As you scroll down, you're going to get to the transform section. Under the transform section, it's going to use an automatic setting to level your image. Okay, it's going to pick up on verticals, diagonals, and it's going to sort of automatically level it for you. Again, if you don't like one of the adjustments, just go to your history and click back one step. You can also use this to scale your image, do anything to the crop. Basically, the crop is up here. The crop overlay, if you click on it, will give you kind of a grid overlay of your image. And from here, you can adjust the crop. So if I really wanted to crop in on this flower, I could bring in my sides. And once I have that crop, just double click to OK it, and I have a smaller image now. Another tool I could use is the spot removal tool. Spot removal tool is right next to the crop tool. If I click on it, it's pretty straightforward. If you don't like a blemish on your photo, you can click and drag to sort of paint away that blemish. And then it's automatically going to give you a sample for you to fill in your blemish with. So I'm going to move my sample over here because I actually want it to fill in with this pink color that's similar to what's under this part of the rose. And when I'm done with that adjustment, I click done in the lower right hand corner. And you can see that it actually blended my image. And it picked up a little bit of this petal here, which is okay, I guess. But again, if you don't want that to happen, make sure that your spot is pretty well isolated. So I'm going to do one over here. I'm going to click and drag. Going to pick a sample area. And you can mess with the size of your spot edit over here in the adjustments. You can switch it to clone, which simply copies the adjustment. If you do that, I suggest you feather it just a little bit. And then when you're all done, click done. Notice the clone option there, because I didn't feather it a whole lot, gave me these real sharp edges. Again, if you mess something up, go back to your history and go back a couple steps. There we go. Another option available to you is the graduated filter options. There's two kinds of graduated filters. There's a broad graduated filter here, and then there's a radial filter. So we're going to use the graduated filter first. And we're just going to click and drag. And this would actually be more useful for, say, like a sunset, and you wanted to make the sky just a little bit darker. But we know our light source is up top, and right now our filter is kind of centered in the image like this, and it's set to exposure plus 1 step. And actually we're going to change that. We're just going to make it a little bit darker. Maybe minus 1/7 of a step. So this is actually kind of helpful because what it means is we're just making the top part of the image a bit darker, but the rest of the image is going to stay nice and light. So this can be really helpful if you have like an overexposed top half and a darker bottom half that you want to stay real light and real high contrast. When you're done with your adjustments to your filter, of which you can do pretty much everything, make sure you click done. Let's say we wanted to add another graduated filter, but we wanted it concentrated around a single area. So that's what I would use the radial filter for. So if you click on radial filter, and then if you click and drag with that, you can make a circular filter. To move the filter around, you just click on the dot in the middle. You can adjust it with these handles on the side. And again, the same options are available here. One of the things we're going to use right now is we're going to invert it so that the center of the filter is actually doing the adjustment instead of the outside of the filter. And again, we're just going to keep the exposure, we're going to keep it normal, but what we're going to increase is the clarity. And we're going to increase our highlights just a little bit. And we're going to turn down our blacks to give it more contrast. That's just going to make the center of this rose pop out a little bit more. And that's actually really convenient. We could increase the feather just a little bit, just to include more of the surrounding area. We could rotate this just a little bit to include this part more. And that allows us to concentrate all our edits within this little circle. And again, I clicked the invert box so that the filter would adjust the inside of the circle. When you're all done with those edits, just click done. If you ever want to go back to a radial filter or a graduated filter, just click on the radial filter button. And you should see a gray dot. And that should allow you to click back on your filter and readjust those settings again. They're kind of just stored under the graduated filter tab or the radial filter tab. And again, to delete them, you can just click on them and hit delete, and that'll remove those filters for you. Okay, we've made a lot of edits to this photo. And if you want to see kind of the before and after edits of the photo, you can use the backslash key, which should be like right above your enter key. If you hold that, that kind of toggles before and after. Or you can use these before and after views. If you click on this, it'll kind of show you a side by side. You can click to make it half and half. You can do top bottom, do half and half, top bottom. I actually like this view the best, and then from here you can swap the before and after settings. You can copy it backwards to the original. You can copy it forwards to the other one. Again, if you don't like that these settings match, just go back a couple steps. And if you want to change your view back to normal, just hit this, the loop view, which is also hotkey D. Alright, let's say you've edited all your photos that you want to edit in Lightroom, and you're ready to export your photos. The amazing thing about Lightroom is when you export your photos, you're basically making like a copy of the photos. So none of the actual original files have been edited. So this is a great way to preserve your originals and make quick edits, and it's called non-destructive editing. Anytime you have the option to non-destructively edit something, take that option so that you always have your original files. So I'm ready to export all these files. So I'm going to shift click by clicking on the first image and holding down shift to select all my images. And then I'm going to go down here to export. I'm going to click export. When I do that, the export dialog box is going to open up. And you can export to the same folder as the original folder. You can choose a folder later or set it to a specific folder. We're going to set it to a specific folder. And you can choose which one. You can choose previous ones. We're actually going to put it in a new folder. So if you click on choose, this will open up, the choose folder option. And under here, you can click new folder. And we're just going to call it flower edits new. And we're going to select that folder. So now it has folder destination, and we can rename our files. We can click rename to, we can give them a name like flower edits, and you can give them like a start number, and basically what that will do is it will export them as flower edits number 1 of 29, and that's actually really convenient if you want an easy to search name for your files. You can add a bunch of other metadata. You can do a watermark, a bunch of other fancy stuff. And then when you're all ready, click export. And that'll take a while. Up here in this little loading bar, it'll kind of show you how long it's taking to export all your files. When your files export, they'll open in Windows Explorer. And again, the edits will be pretty apparent. You know, they should look a bit different than your previous set of files. And you can kind of see that in the thumbnails here. And that's basically how to use Lightroom. You're going to use it to import your files. You're going to arrange them how you want them. You're going to do some real basic edits, and then you're going to export those edits to another folder. And from there, you can use those files for Photoshop. You can print them, but Lightroom should be your first step because it's really easy to use and it's really, really, really fast.